Microsoft AZ-900 certification dumps have been updated, which are the latest version in the whole market. Share some Microsoft certification AZ-900 certification dumps questions here for you to study. 1. You plan to provision infrastructure as a service (IaaS) resources in Azure. Which resource is an example of IaaS? A. An Azure web app. B. An Azure virtual machine. C. An Azure Logic app. D. An Azure SQL database. Answer, B. 2. Your company plans to migrate all its network resources to Azure. You need to start the planning process by exploring Azure. What should you create first? A virtual network. B. A management group. C. A subscription. D. A resource group. Answer, C. 3. You have an Azure web app. You need to manage the settings of the web app from an iPhone. What are 2 Azure management tools that you can use? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Note, each correct selection is worth 1 point. A. Azure CLI. B. The Azure Portal. C. Azure Cloud Shell. D. Windows PowerShell. E. Azure Storage Explorer. Answer, A, C. 4. You have an on-premises application that sends email notifications automatically based on a rule. You plan to migrate the application to Azure. You need to recommend a serverless computing solution for the application. What should you include in the recommendation? A Logic app. B. A server image in Azure Marketplace. C. An API app. D. A web app. Answer, A. 5. Your company plans to deploy several million sensors that will upload data to Azure. You need to identify which Azure resources must be created to support the planned solution. Which 2 Azure resources should you identify? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Note, each correct selection is worth 1 point. A. Azure Data Lake. B. Azure Queue Storage. C. Azure File Storage. D. Azure IoT Hub. E. Azure Notification Hubs. Answer, B, D. 6. You plan to deploy a website to Azure. The website will be accessed by users worldwide and will host large video files. You need to recommend which Azure feature must be used to provide the best video playback experience. What should you recommend? A. An Azure Traffic Manager profile. B. A Content Delivery Network (CDN). C. An Azure ExpressRoute circuit. D. An application gateway. Answer, B. 7. Your company has 10 departments. The company plans to implement an Azure environment. You need to ensure that each department can use a different payment option for the Azure services it consumes. What should you create for each department? A reservation. B. A subscription. C. A resource group. D. A container instance. Answer, B. 8. In which Azure support plans can you open a new support request? A. Premier and Professional Direct only. B. Premier, Professional Direct, and Standard only. C. Premier, Professional Direct, Standard, and Developer only. D. Premier, Professional Direct, Standard, Developer, and Basic. Answer, C. 9. You have a resource group named RG1. You plan to create virtual networks and app services in RG1. You need to prevent the creation of virtual machines only in RG1. What should you use? A. A lock. B. An Azure role. C. A tag. D. An Azure policy. Answer, A. 10. Which Azure service should you use to store certificates? A. Azure Security Center. B. An Azure Storage Account. C. Azure Key Vault. D. Azure Information Protection. Answer, C.